Monday, Debbie. It feels like Friday. How are you? Let's have
I
that
am,
conversation.
yeah, so I'm doing good. I had a pretty busy weekend, but new week and forward to the challenges that may come,
Yes,
maybe.
for Monday. Me too. I'm doing good. I'm actually feeling really excited. This morning, I know sometimes Monday can be dreary. It's raining a lot in New York. It's gloomy. It's a little cool, which is nice because it's not so hot and humid. But I feel energized because I know you and I were on a call a long time this weekend working on some things. But I feel so accomplished because we got so much done this
Yeah,
weekend, right?
yeah,
So I'm feeling pumped for the week that's not hanging over my head anymore a little bit, right? It's we got through a lot of it, so like it's not as heavy right today.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm doing good and I'm excited for this conversation.
Me too, and I'm super excited. Yeah, we did get a lot done, and I'm super proud of what we did too. It's
Me
it's
too.
it's good.
It
It's
is
all
good. It's good. Stay tuned. You'll get to see it. We're excited. Yeah, we made a big impact and it's gonna make a difference. So let's talk about it. We're gonna talk about, because we're real women. Obviously, we're no bots, right? But we also have real conversations. And Debbie and I are partnering up with the Mom Link as leaders in the Mom Link to break the stigma around mental health conversations, mental health stigmas, and just opening up the conversation because even in 2023 it is still stigmatized in many communities, uh, in homes, in communities, in places, and people do not feel safe. So Debbie, what's your take? What is your history on mental health? Like, why is this important to you?
Well, for me, I'm somebody that I've had anxiety for the majority of my adult life, and I didn't talk about it. And to talk about it was, oh, it's in your head, you just get
Mhm.
over it. That's not really the case. So for me, it's important to talk about because I feel if people can talk about their blood pressure and their heart issues and their diabetes, why can't I talk about my anxiety? And I know for me, opening up has helped me a lot because when I would hold it back, I would get anxiety about the fact that I was hiding my anxiety because I didn't feel I could be open and honest because people would look at me differently. And now I've just, I've embraced the perfectly imperfect and this is me.
I love it. I love it. I don't even think I introduced myself. I am MaryKim Farkas. This is Debbie Dowling-Wahba. I get it mixed up. This is Debbie. We're doing this every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and we're bringing in guests or having these conversations. And today we're kind of leading into what is the number one mental illness across the world, the leading, and then also what generation. I don't know the boomers, the Z's, the X's, the Y's. I don't know the difference, but it's the majority is the Gen Z, which is 9 to 24-year-olds, 1997 to 2012, which is mind blowing to me because that's our youth, right? That is the kids who are growing up in this world that we are in today, with between social media and all the stuff that we see on these social platforms that are making waves depending on whatever subject is at hand. So I was actually shocked to hear that it's depression actually is the number one
Yes.
mental illness, which makes sense because it's been challenging, right? If life wasn't challenging before the pandemic, it definitely is challenging now, and we're still like managing all these things. But it makes me sad that our youth are really in the thick of it. But it also makes sense, right? Because they have social media, they have mass shootings, they have just bullying. If they're being bullied, it's 24/7, where we're both in the older generation. Wine, like, I think you're maybe in the same age group, like the 50s,
Yes.
right? So we didn't have, if you were bullied, right, it ended once you got off the bus, right? Not that it's okay, right, or that you don't deal with the aftermath, but it wasn't 24/7. So our kids are dealing with so much. So I want to read some stats and let's have a conversation because this is mind-blowing to me. So the number one mental illness, as I said, was depression, affecting the Gen Z, 9 to 24-year-olds, 1997 to 2012. It is also the world's leading cause of disability. 6 out of 10 people who have depression in Latin America and the Caribbean do not seek help or get the right treatment. Gen Z is twice as likely to battle depression due to when they did a survey, 3 out of 4 Gen Zs said it was their experience with mass shootings or the anticipation of a mass shooting.
Yeah.
Okay, Gen Z are likely to feel that suicide is a better option for them in instead of dealing with the struggle of what comes with depression. That was 5 to 18% of the people who were surveyed said that they'd rather choose a suicide over dealing with depression. Gen Z also has the highest reporting rates of depression, which we just shared, yet are more likely than previous generations to report the problems they are experiencing with depression or any mental health, which for me makes sense because I grew up, and I think you did too, Debbie, and many people on this platform who are leaders, right? That we grew up in a time where we didn't talk about mental health,
Mm-mm.
right? And Debbie shared that earlier, mental illness. And even in 2023, even with my brother dealing with multiple mental illnesses and diagnoses, I don't have a dog. That's my phone. Because that makes me like, oh, where's the dog? Oh, that's my phone. Okay. So even in 2023, it's still stigmatized. There's a lot of false narratives around mental health. With mental health, you can get caught up into self-diagnosis where your families and friends will like, oh, you're just a drug addict now. It's having these conversations that we're having that hopefully just shed some light on someone going through this or having a family member go through this. So we are here to just talk about, take it as it comes today.
Yeah, and it's sad, and when you think about that generation too, they they went through the whole, pandemic, and they
Mm,
were isolated from the world and the experiences of proms and graduations and all the things. So, in a way I could see where, the depression could come in because they kind of missed out on a lot of those pivotal moments and those milestones that were just taken away from them. And then, like you talked about with all the mass shootings and stuff, it's a scary world we live in. But depression affects a lot of people, and some will admit it, some will not admit it, and they try to have conversations and people don't understand it, so they're like, oh, you'll get over it.
yeah.
And some people, it's not that simple. It can be caused by a chemical imbalance, it can be caused by trauma that it keeps coming up for them, but they're kind of pushed to the side, and then they don't want to talk about it, which leads into the deeper depression because they feel alone and like nobody understands them.
Absolutely, the isolation, and during the pandemic, there was a huge amount of isolation. I keep thinking when I think back, even in those moments, right? And we had to do Zoom. Like if you weren't using Zoom before, you had to learn, right? And the kids didn't matter like what age they were, the preschoolers, all the way up to colleges, right?
Mhm.
And it was thank goodness that we had Zoom. That's all I want to say, right? That we had the technology that we had in order to feel somewhat connected to our communities, right? And so I just imagine like if this happened back 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, I think we would have been in a more dire state than we are in today, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because
Yeah.
we did have things like Zoom, and then, there was it was an app called House Party, and we had a whole bunch of us on there, and we'd just randomly pop in, and then, this one and that one, and then before you knew it, you had a party going on. But it was the way to stay connected, whereas, you think about it, even to when we were kids, what would we have done? We would have been completely isolated. Maybe, I mean, I grew up in an apartment, but I could maybe have yelled out the window to somebody, but still, it's like, what would you have done? You would have stayed in the apartment, like in a box. And it's
Right.
kind of like we were all put in boxes for a while. And it's hard,
Absolutely.
especially when kids are at those developing stages where they're learning the socialization skills and they're learning all these different ways to be around public, and then it's all just taken away from them, and they're forced to go into what really was they we were they missed out on a very crucial part of the socialization that comes along with school and being able to just go out and play and be normal kids. So,
Yes. I love that we're talking about this because I remember myself growing up, and you as a child, right? You knew there was graduations. You knew that there was going to be a grad party. You knew that there was going to be a ceremony, a dance, at the end of the year, a prom, right? And you looked forward to those times. And all of
Yes.
a sudden, for it to be swiped away from you, right? Because of health, because of all the things, right? And even when things started to open up, it was still restricted for a long period of time, just for safety and for other reasons.
Mhm.
And just, only thing I can relate to is I grew up in a very small town in Florida, and myself and my two older siblings, we were like 1 year apart. And so it was my year that I was going to graduate high school after being in the same schools with all my friends since kindergarten. It was my year, and I was mad at my parents at the time because it was at the end of the world, right? If
Yeah.
you're not going to graduate with your friends that you anticipate for, like, oh my gosh, my life is over, right? And it was my year that they decided, because they couldn't keep holding it back, for us to move back to New York. And I was angry. I was upset. I was sad. But I had to deal with it. I did fly down to go to the prom and the graduation for my friends, but it wasn't the same, right? And taking that 10 exit, right? I can just imagine our kids, what they went through, because was it 3 years? Almost 3 years of managing
Yeah.
that, from the first set to like kind of where we felt safe, right? With the
Yes.
vaccines and stuff going around.
Yeah, and like for my oldest son, when we moved to Florida, he was going into his senior year, and
Mm.
we gave him the option to stay in New York and finish out school and finish his senior year, or come. He's like, "No, I'm coming with you." And it wound up actually being the best year of his entire like high school career, I guess you could say. And he was, he graduated in a class of, I think it was almost like 900.
Wow.
Sitting through that graduation was a lot of fun. But no, but I was so proud of him. But I gave him that choice because, especially senior year, you've been with these same people since freshman year. You've gone to the proms and you've gone to the different things that occur. And then, senior year, it's like, okay, well, we're at the end and we're almost there.
We're
And
gonna
then to
celebrate
move,
together,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
and then to move. But like I said, I gave him the option to stay, and he could have stayed in New York with his dad. But he's like, "No, I'm coming with you." And it wound up. I think here he blossomed the most. I think it was just a different environment, different people. It wasn't the same people, and I think he really blossomed in his senior year of high school.
I love that. And I think it's so important because you were a good support person, a good support adult, right? And
Yes.
who also has an understanding because of your own anxiety, and then the work that you also do. You have a lot of certificates, right? So you're like trained and stuff, that it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And so my hope is, as we continue these conversations on Monday, is that anyone that's listening gains a little nuggets, right? To
Mhm.
just open up and be that safe space, whether for your kids, your loved ones, friends, whoever, maybe even a coworker, right? Because we don't know what their home environment looks like. And do they even have a safe space? Or maybe they've been ridiculed when they said, like, oh, I'm not feeling well. I'm having these thoughts. And someone that they thought was safe just said, oh, it's all in your head. Get over it.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of the language that we grew up with. Right. That was what they knew.
Yeah.
So I'm loving that we're able to just share a little light to try to open up people's eyes and just see things a little differently.
Yeah. And the one thing I say to anyone, and this is my first piece of advice: if you know somebody that is dealing with a mental illness, whether it's depression, bipolar, anxiety, all the different diagnoses, to them it's a real feeling. So the most important thing you can do is validate it. And I think that people miss that because they don't feel it, they don't understand it, they don't experience it. They think it is just something, it's all in your head and it's just going to go away. And it doesn't. So there are ways to manage it. There are ways to cope. I mean, whether it's through medication, therapies, whatever. But understand that to them it's a real feeling. So make sure that you're validating that. Make sure that
Mm.
you may not understand it, but say, okay, I don't understand it, but I'm here to support you.
I love that. It's the same language that I'm only learning a lot of this in the last year because we didn't really have these conversations, but
Right.
learning about these things, it's the same thing we say, like if you're having a disagreement with someone and someone comes to you, well, you made me feel this way, but that wasn't your intention, right? It's good to say, like, oh, I didn't, that wasn't my intention, but you can't take away how someone's feeling,
Right.
right? And just, just think of it as if the roles were reversed, right? And you were sharing that with someone that you trusted, and they said, "Well, I don't believe that those are your feelings." It just doesn't feel good. It's not honoring who the person is and what they're sharing, because it doesn't matter if someone said the same thing someone says the same thing to you and you would have felt differently. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that Debbie's not experiencing those feelings, right? Because we don't know everything about everyone. So I love that you shared, like, it's okay to say, "Listen, I didn't understand that. Oh, I understand. I'm here to support you." And just be that person, because they're trusting you. Because it is a scary thing to open up to, that you are having these thoughts, right? And these ideas, because anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, every single one has a different way that your mind decides to function.
Function, yeah, and to reach out, and
Yeah.
it takes a big step for someone to come and feel safe enough to even come to you and say, "This is how I'm feeling," and then they open up, and you're like, "No, that's not real." It really it hurts them, and then they like, "Okay, well, I thought I could talk to this person, but since I can't talk to them, who can I really talk to?" So it becomes an inner battle, and and I
Mhm.
say that because I'll give an example. When I was having my third child, I had an epidural, and I could feel everything, and the nurse kept sitting there telling me, "No, you have an epidural. You shouldn't be feeling anything." And finally, I turned to her and I said, I feel this. It's
It's
not
just
in my mind,
right.
and you're not listening to me. This isn't
Mm.
working. Like, I feel everything. So I actually decided if I ever had more children, I would never have an epidural again, which I didn't because I was like, I felt the pain anyway. So why put myself through that risk of the needle? But that's
Yeah.
what goes back to the whole, like when it comes to mental illness, when you're not validating somebody, you're basically saying that they're not feeling the way they're feeling. And they are feeling that way. So allow them to be, allow them to express themselves. And if it's something you don't feel you can handle, you could say, listen, I understand you're feeling that way. I don't understand it, and I may not be the best person to talk to about it.
Mhm.
And try to help them find somebody that is. So you don't necessarily have to take on the burden of speaking to them or about it or whatever, but just validate those are feelings and tell them you're going to be supportive and maybe even help them find the help that they need.
I love that. I love that, because you're right. Because when just anyone can relate to this in any aspect in their life, right? When you had shared something with someone that you trusted, right? And they didn't hold that space for you, right? They may have told you, like, that's not true, or like, you're making this up, or you were the one who is at fault, right? You feel less than, right? And that also allows, like, human nature, human behavior, we're going to cave back into our own self, right? That safety where we're not being scolded for how we're feeling or what's going on. And it's so important to just say, "I'll support you. But I don't understand. Let me
Yeah.
help you. If I can make some phone calls. And there's a lot of resources. Every community has resources to help support the mental health. Local hospitals, community centers, social services departments. There are many ways to not feel alone. In any community, there is support. So, help that person that says, "Listen, I'm not sure, but what, let's go. I'll go with you to this place. Let's go have a conversation," right? So,
Right. And maybe you know somebody that might have that experience, and you can reach out to them and say, listen, I know somebody that's going through this and I really don't know where to get the support. So is there any way you could help me to find the support that they need? That's the biggest thing. Ask for help.
yes.
And a lot of people are afraid to ask for help because they think it makes them weak, and it doesn't make you weak. It does not make you weak. It's actually, for me, it means you're strong enough to say, "Hey, listen, I'm going through this and I need help." That's bravery to me, because a lot of times people don't want to share because they're afraid of what people might think, and they it scares them. So when you're actually talking to people and reaching out, that's brave.
Yes,
That's
it takes
brave.
a lot of guts. It takes a
Yes.
lot of guts, and we talked in our clubhouse room today about, me in particular, we were talking about when you ask the question, like, today's time, a lot of times we're like, oh, how are you is like the new hi, right? And we're not really waiting for the person to actually answer that question, right? Where they can actually say like, hey Debbie, how are you? And I just keep talking, and and you may want to respond to it, right? But we kind of take it as just hi. And that's also another way to just like, people just want to be seen and heard. And sometimes reach out to your community, but also help others. And this is how we change the narrative. This is how we bring communities together and ask the questions and also seek out. Like you shared, Debbie, I love that you shared, like, you may know someone, right? Or you may just know, like, maybe there's your friend is a therapist. Say, listen, my friend's going through this, or someone's going through this. Do you have anyone that you recommend?
Mhm.
Right? Or how should we go about it? And sometimes it's just helping another human being out along this journey of life.
Yeah, and you need community, whether it's to, for your business, whether it's to help you with advice on children, whether, whatever it is, everybody needs community. Community is key in anything.
Yeah.
We're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to do things alone. We need that community, and surrounding yourself with the right people. That's important
Mm.
because you do sort of become the people that you surround yourself with. So it's important who you surround yourself with, but make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the people that are going to be supportive, be uplifting, still call you out when you're wrong, but be there to help you figure out, okay, this is wrong, but let's do this. So those are the kind of people you want in your life. You don't want the ones that are just going to bring you down a bad path with them because they're on the bad path. And then they're going to get to the bottom and you're going to be at the bottom with them. And then it's like, now what?
Yeah. Absolutely. Community is so important. Surrounding yourself with people that see you for you, right? That will support you with really wanting nothing back, right? Because sometimes people expect, well, if I'm going to help you with this, Debbie, you better do this, right?
Yeah.
And we as humans just need to, I think I want to say, get back to basics, because I think back in the day, I wasn't there born back in the day, right? But I think how I have seen my grandparents, how they function, how my older aunts and uncles functioned. They always just wanted to give back in the best way that they knew. And they never asked, well, how come you didn't bring me 10 pies? Like, I gave that to you last year, right? It was just about, it was really based around community, right? And I think our communities of knowing your neighbors today looks different than in the
Very different.
past,
It
right?
definitely does.
We used to, like, okay, go outside and play and come back before the lights shut off, but the neighbors were watching us, making
Yeah.
sure we weren't stepping out of line, and if they
Mhm.
saw us, they said something to us. The narrative's changed now, where a lot of people feel like, well, it's not my space to say anything, and or they've gotten backlash from someone in a very negative, up to like losing their lives in some cases because they butted in. And so I think we just need to get back to that somehow, right? Of just basic humanity.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, they come from the attitude of what's in it for me.
Mm.
And you can't be that way. And, going back to like what you said with kids, we were allowed to go outside and we kind of had free range, but it really wasn't like we were given parameters. And it was because in each parameter, there was a parent that could see what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So while we were, we did have the freedom to roam in this air, like this. I mean, it was a pretty big space to roam, to roam around in, and we could go to so and so's house, but we had to go a specific way. And if we went the other way, it was like, okay, why'd you go that way? So, but you knew that there was always like, you knew, but you didn't know, but you knew, you knew, but you didn't know, but you knew. There was always somebody watching out. And, nowadays I think that we've gotten away from that because people don't want to take the responsibility for other people's children because they're like, okay, well, now this parent's going to turn around and, whatever the case may be. And then it's the always, well, what's in it for me?
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
I do this, what are you going to do for me? Instead of just, let me do this and see what happens. And I know that I've always come from that place of serving, and I never do anything expecting anything in return. And I'm amazed at the blessings that I've had just because I give from my heart and I don't ever expect anything.
Yes, I call that the universe boomerang.
Yes.
That is how the universe works. And I too have seen blessings come, because you know what? If you're going to give and if you're going to support, do it because you want to do it, right?
Yes.
Because the world works that way. Whatever you believe in, it's the universe boomerang. So I truly believe that, and when you do something good, it definitely always comes back to you
Absolutely.
tenfold. And there was a time that at the local mall, my son was, just learning how to do the slides and interacting with kids. And there were some bigger kids playing freeze tag in this little playground. And they were so reckless. The parents were nowhere to be found, where they were knocking kids over. And me, I was like, where's the parents? What's going on here? Like, they're starting to like knock little kids off the slides because they're playing tag, just being teens, right? And I looked around, no one was saying anything. So finally, they're like starting to get my son and, getting him involved. And I was like, this is not right. And I stepped in, but in a nice way. I'm like, okay, how do I do this without someone getting offended? And I don't sure with these teenagers be like, who the heck are you? Because I mean, like, you're just a teenager too. Because they look younger sometimes, they don't know who I am. And I said, listen, this is not a place. There are young kids around here. They're learning. You need to go play freeze tag someplace else. And they all looked at me. And one of the boys said, all right, you're right. And he guided them to go that way. But there are ways to say without getting kind of into any confrontation, depending on the setting. But I think we just have to look out for our kids, right? And just remind them, you're adults playing on these little slides, knocking off these babies because you're playing freeze tag. Go outside.
Right. And, and that's why I say that a lot of these kids have missed out on the social
Yes.
cues because they have this attitude when you tell them something, they're like, who are you to tell me?
Yeah.
And my goodness, if I ever said that to somebody when I was a kid and my mother found out, woo, that,
No
but now
way.
kids are so free to say that. They're just like, well, who are you to tell me?
Yeah. Right.
Oh, I'm
Exactly.
sorry.
Yeah. And I think it's just, little at a time, I think we can make a big impact. And
Yes.
it was those parameters that we set up. And even if there was no one watching, we knew that rumors get around that there are people always outside and they know who our parents are. Right. Where a lot of times we don't even know who our neighbors are, what their names are in a lot of communities. And my phone, sorry.
Your dog.
I swear, I promise you, because before I would have those nice musics on them, be like, oh, that's such a nice tone. They're like, Mary, that's your phone. And I'm like,
Yeah.
now I know I don't have a dog. A dog is my phone ringing. But just to reach out to support, that at the end of the day, we're just having conversations in different ways to support, especially if anyone comes with they're having some kind of anxiety or depression or don't feel themselves or having these thoughts that are just not what they're used to and they feel confused. Just validate their feelings, let them know that however you can support them or guide them, because we all want to be connected and feel like we're not alone. So yeah, anything else, Debbie, that you think we should add or share?
No, just that community is important, and when you're going through things, it is better to. It makes you feel more comforted if you feel like there's somebody else that understands you. So that's why I say find people and be that encouraging person. And if you don't know or experience the feelings that this person is confiding in you, find somebody that does. Find the resources so that they feel okay. You can't help me, but you've heard me and you're trying to help me the best way that you know how.
Right, exactly, exactly. And I always say, imagine yourself in those shoes,
Mhm.
right? Because then you can kind of, even if you're not an empath, you can imagine like, okay, so if it was me having these thoughts and I went to myself, right? Or the other person, how would I feel? And how would I want the response to be,
Right.
right? So just be mindful, about mindset, right? Being mindful and just community makes a huge, huge difference.
Yes,
So yeah.
sure does.
I'm loving this. So thank you everyone for tuning in. If you are listening to the replay and you want to connect with myself or Debbie and want to join us as one of our guests, please reach out to either one of us. I am Mary Kim Farkas on all platforms. Reach out and just say Monday Mindset or Monday, and we know we'll reach out to you. We're open to any topic about anything stigma around mindset and or the mental health arena. If you're an expert in your field, if you want to add some value, if you've gone through a situation, and we're all about sharing stories to break the stigmas, open up the platform. Being a mom, an entrepreneur, mental health, all those things, right? Because we need the support and the community so we can continue to grow and learn.
Yeah, and you can find me everywhere as Debbie D. Wahba. So all platforms.
All platforms.
I'm everywhere.
Me too. You can just find me. You can Google me. Yeah. But definitely, Debbie, have an amazing day. Everyone have an amazing day. Stay connected to the Mom Link. We have an upcoming summit. It's a virtual and a hybrid summit, October 6th and 7th. Come meet us in person in New Jersey on October 7th in Newark, New Jersey. And be on the lookout. We are doing Mom Link pop-up meetups across the country starting in August. So this is a great way we can bring our communities and your communities together so we can grow our communities as a whole and make an impact locally and globally.
Yes.
So thank you, everyone. Debbie, have an amazing day. I'll see you soon. Okay. Bye, everyone. Thank you.